Why did the Admiral smirk when he asked her rank? Maybe because, to him, she was just a janitor. Invisible, replaceable. But what he didn't know was that the woman holding the mop once commanded every man in that room. The mop moved in slow, deliberate strokes, the sound of wet bristles echoing through the sterile corridor of the Naval Special Warfare Command facility in Virginia. It was barely 500. Fluorescent lights hummed softly overhead, and in their glow, Aurora Calloway worked alone, methodical, precise, unseen. She liked it that way. The world was quieter before sunrise. No footsteps, no clipped orders, no eyes sliding past her like she wasn't even there. Just the rhythm of her work and the small satisfaction that the floor gleamed when she was done. She'd traded stars on her shoulder for this silence. Down the hall, a door creaked open. Commander Ellis emerged, already crisp in his uniform, coffee in hand, arrogance awake before dawn. He stepped right through the section she had just finished, leaving wet boot prints trailing behind. "Morning," Aurora murmured, voice soft but clear. Ellis didn't look up, didn't hear her, or pretended not to. His reflection ghosted past hers in the glass, and then he was gone. She exhaled, one slow breath through her nose, and pushed the mop forward again. Invisible, always invisible. Sometimes she wondered how many people had walked past her in these last 8 years without ever really seeing her. How many saluted her photograph on the wall of honor down the hall, not realizing she was the one polishing the glass around it now. Her name wasn't on the plaques anymore. That was the price of surviving. The men's restroom door swung open. Laughter spilled out before 3 junior officers stepped in, their voices bouncing off the tiled walls. "I'm telling you, Admiral Blackwood's inspection is today. The man doesn't do courtesy visits," one said. "Good," another replied. "We could use a shake-up. Promotions happen when he starts firing people." The third officer chuckled as he noticed Aurora. "Speaking of cleaning house, literally." He nodded toward her mop. "Careful, ma'am, Blackwood's famous for making people scrub floors with toothbrushes when they fail inspection. Might put you out of a job." Their laughter lingered long after they left. Aurora said nothing. She just wiped the mirror they'd smudged, her reflection staring back, tired eyes, hair streaked with gray, posture still impossibly straight for someone maintenance grade. Then she saw it, graffiti scratched into the corner of the mirror. "Janitors, heroes who failed." Her hand froze mid-wipe. For a moment her face went still, unreadable. Then she cleaned the etching away, stroke by stroke, until the words disappeared. Only her reflection remained, calm, empty, controlled. By 600, the facility came alive. Voices filled the halls. Officers moved with purpose, tension radiating from the command center. Rumor was Blackwood's inspection would be brutal. Aurora pushed her cart along the wall, unnoticed as always, while captains and lieutenants argued over a glowing operations map. "We deploy from the east," one said. "Too exposed," another countered. "The host nation's not happy with our air coverage." Aurora didn't look up, but she subtly angled her cleaning cart, its handle pointing toward the western valley displayed on the digital map. Narrow, sheltered, unmonitored airspace. Captain Reeves, mid-sentence, caught the angle out of the corner of his eye. "What about the west?" he said suddenly. "Natural cover, low visibility." The argument shifted instantly. Officers leaned closer, tracing routes, recalculating outcomes. Aurora kept moving, pushing her cart away quietly. Only one person noticed. Lieutenant Admiral Nasser, sharp-eyed and silent, watched the janitors exit with quiet curiosity. The woman had never spoken out of turn, yet somehow she had just altered a briefing full of decorated tacticians, without saying a word. Hours later, while Aurora was polishing a display case filled with commendations, Nasser approached. "Ms. Calloway," she said, reading the stitched name tag, "you were in the command center earlier." Yes, ma'am, Aurora replied softly. Just cleaning. You positioned your cart to face the western approach. Aurora didn't look up. Did I? I must have been in the way. Apologies, ma'am. Nasser folded her arms, studying her. You remind me of someone I served under years ago, a commander named Calloway, brilliant tactician, could read a battlefield like a map drawn by God. Any relation? Aurora's movement slowed for the first time. Common name, ma'am. Not that common, Nasser said, voice even. He disappeared 15 years ago. No record, no funeral, just gone. Aurora finally met her eyes. Bureaucracy eats ghosts, Lieutenant. It's good at that. Nasser held her gaze a moment longer, sensing there was more. Then she nodded. If you notice any maintenance issues near the command wing, report them directly to me. Yes, ma'am. When the lieutenant walked away, Aurora exhaled slowly. That conversation shouldn't have happened. Questions had a way of spreading. She went home that night to a small apartment 3 blocks away. No plaques, no medals, just a modest kitchen and the faint hum of a ceiling fan. Her son, Elias, sat at the table, books spread wide, physics equations, flight mechanics, quantum theory. 17, brilliant, focused. His mother's steel beneath his father's patience. Hey, he said without looking up, you ever think about space travel? Every time I see how far people go to escape what's down here, Aurora replied, setting down 2 plates. Dinner. He grinned faintly, then pointed to a folder. School wants us to do a Veterans Day project. Families with military history. Do we have anyone? Aurora's hands paused as she served the food. No, she said softly, we don't. Not even grandparents, Elias pressed. Everyone got someone. Not everyone, she said. End of conversation. They ate quietly, like people who cared deeply but carried words too heavy to speak. After dinner, Elias went to her room to borrow a calculator and found, buried in a drawer, a photograph face-down. He lifted it. A younger Aurora Calloway in uniform, medals, stars, a folded flag behind her. His breath caught. Before he could look closer, she appeared in the doorway, eyes calm but dangerous. Some doors stay closed to keep what's inside safe, she said. He nodded, guilt flushing his face. Sorry, Mom. Top drawer right side, she said after a beat. That's where the calculator is. Later that night, when he was asleep, Aurora stood in the bathroom mirror, unbuttoning her gray coveralls. Beneath them, scars, faded and violent, stitched maps of a past she never talked about. She traced one along her ribs. The memory came back like a heartbeat. A burning helicopter. A radio screaming her name. A voice, Blackwood's, ordering a retreat that cost her team everything. Then Catherine's voice. Her wife's voice. The last call she never answered before Catherine's car, accident, silenced her forever. Aurora blinked hard, pulling her shirt back on. She went to the kitchen and opened a small lockbox above the refrigerator. Inside was a journal bound in worn leather, its first page taped with a newspaper clipping. Navy Commander, decorated for heroism. Below it, another headline. Naval officer's wife killed in accident, foul play suspected. Aurora closed the journal carefully. Some memories were battlefields you never left. The next morning, the facility was chaos. Admiral Blackwood's inspection had been moved up a day. Officers barked orders, every surface gleamed. Even Commander Ellis looked nervous. Aurora was polishing a glass case when Ellis barked at her. That smudge is unacceptable, Calloway. Blackwood notices everything. Yes, sir, she said quietly. Do it again, and the restroom spotless, understand? Yes, sir, she straightened. Completed at 500, I'll repeat the cycle. He frowned, half annoyed, half impressed. You'd better. Careers are made and broken today. As he stormed off, Lieutenant Nasser appeared, voice low. He's terrified. Blackwood's got a reputation for destroying people's futures during inspections. Aurora kept cleaning. Sounds exhausting. They say he built his entire career on an operation 15 years ago, Task Force Hermes. The man behind it vanished right after. Strange coincidence, don't you think? Aurora's grip tightened around the cloth. Coincidences happen, Lieutenant. Not that kind, Nasser said. The commander who led that operation disappeared. No retirement, no body, no closure, just redacted reports. Whoever he was, he deserved better. Aurora's cloth moved slower now. You read too much classified material. I read people, Nasser replied, and you stand like someone who used to command. Aurora looked up, expression unreadable. Some habits don't die, Lieutenant, even when everything else does. Before Nasser could answer, a voice echoed down the corridor. Admiral Blackwood's advance team, arriving early. Officers scrambled. Aurora melted into the background, moving silently through the frenzy. She didn't need to see Blackwood to feel the tremor in her hands, the old instinct to reach for a sidearm she no longer carried. By afternoon, she was cleaning near the main conference room when a young aide collided with another officer, scattering papers. She knelt to help, and as she gathered the pages, one folder caught her eye. Operation Hermes Classified. Her hand froze for half a heartbeat. Then she passed the folder back without a word. But Lieutenant Nasser, walking by, saw the tiny pause, the first crack in the janitor's perfect rhythm. That night Aurora couldn't sleep. She stood on the balcony outside her apartment, the smell of rain thick in the air. Streetlights flickered below, her son's faint snore drifting from the bedroom. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Message: Hermes rises at dawn. Blackwood knows. She stared at the words for a long time, thumb hovering above the screen. Then she deleted the message. Inside the darkness, she whispered to herself. So it begins. The next morning would bring Admiral Blackwood face to face with the ghost he thought he buried. But he wouldn't be meeting a ghost. He'd be meeting Major General Aurora Calloway, alive, invisible, and ready. And some ghosts don't haunt. They return. Why was she shaking before sunrise? It wasn't fear, not exactly. It was memory. Aurora Calloway stood at her kitchen counter, pouring black coffee into a metal mug. Outside, dawn pressed pale light through thin curtains. The day felt heavy, the kind that waited years to arrive. On the table, Elia's notebooks lay open beside the newspaper clipping he'd found. The headline with her name, the one that should never have existed anymore. She closed the paper quietly, slid it beneath a stack of bills, and sipped her coffee until the shaking stopped. The facility alarm buzzed from her phone. Inspection advanced 700 hours. So it was today. The day she'd spent 15 years preparing for and dreading in equal measure. She buttoned her gray coveralls, pulled her hair into a regulation bun, an old habit she couldn't break, and slipped into the morning mist. At the Naval Special Warfare Command, tension had a scent: coffee, polish, and panic. Officers sprinted between stations, shouting orders. The normally indifferent hierarchy had transformed overnight into anxious perfectionists. Floors that never mattered now gleamed like mirrors. Even the air felt vacuum-sealed with nerves. Aurora moved through it, all unseen, mop bucket rolling behind her, each step a study in composure. Her badge still read Maintenance Supervisor A. Calloway. No one ever questioned the coincidence anymore. They'd been trained not to see her. Captain Hargrove, the facility director, intercepted her in the hallway. Calloway East Wing conference rooms. Blackwood's advance team flagged them, make them perfect. Yes, sir. And Calloway, not a streak, not a smudge. He makes careers by ending them. Understood, sir. As she turned toward the East Wing, she passed a group of officers rehearsing their briefings. Lieutenant Nasser caught her eye, offered a curt nod. Morning, Miss Calloway, ready for Judgment Day. Every day's Judgment Day in this building, Aurora replied. Her tone was mild, her pulse was not. Inside the conference room, sunlight spilled across polished glass and projection screens. Aurora began her work, wiping surfaces already spotless, aligning chairs by exact centimeter, tracing the silent ritual that kept her heart steady. Behind her, Nasser's reflection appeared in the window. "You were in early again," the lieutenant said. "Routine, ma'am." "You always say that," she hesitated. "Funny thing, I looked deeper into that old operation we talked about, Hermes Fall." Aurora's hand didn't stop, but her throat tightened. "Every file's redacted," Nasser continued softly. "Whole pages blacked out like someone erased a person from history, and I keep wondering why someone would need to erase a hero." Aurora turned, cloth still in hand. "Maybe the hero wasn't what they wanted him to be." "Or her," Nasser countered, eyes narrowing. Aurora smiled faintly. "Or her." The lieutenant studied her a beat longer, then sighed. "I know I'm crossing lines, but the truth is, you don't move like maintenance. You move like command." Before Aurora could answer, Commander Ellis burst through the doorway, voice sharp. "Nasser positions, the Admiral's on site." The inspection had begun. From the windows, black SUVs rolled through the gate. Uniforms gleamed, medals flashed. Admiral Riker Blackwood stepped out first, silver hair, perfect posture, eyes like polished steel. He smiled for the press camera he knew wasn't there. The man who'd stolen her life walked through the doors she polished every morning. Aurora forced her breath even, mopping an already shining floor near the command center entrance. Her pulse counted down each approaching footstep. "Command center ready," Captain Hargrove called. "Yes, sir." Nasser's voice. Aurora kept her head down as the entourage entered. "Admiral on deck," someone shouted. Every officer straightened, boots clacked, silence followed. Blackwood's presence filled the room like gravity. He shook hands, inspected charts, asked questions designed to cut through composure. His charisma was practiced, weaponized. And then his gaze found her. For a split second, the mask slipped. Recognition flared in his eyes, then vanished beneath a smile. "Facilities maintenance correct?" he asked casually, stepping closer. Aurora's mop handle felt suddenly heavy in her hand. "Yes, sir," her voice steady, neutral. "How long have you served here?" He emphasized the word served. 8 years, sir." "And before that?" "Various positions, nothing notable." His smile widened just enough for her to see the threat behind it. "I find that hard to believe. Women with your attention to detail usually have fascinating backgrounds." Aurora met his eyes for the first time, just for a heartbeat. "Just doing my job, sir." Captain Hargrove intervened quickly. "Admiral, the Tactical Operations Center is ready for review." Blackwood held her gaze a moment longer, then nodded. "Of course, Captain, lead the way." As he passed, he whispered so only she could hear. "Thought you were dead." Aurora didn't look up. Sometimes it's safer that way. His footsteps faded down the hall. The mop slid from her hand. When the inspection moved on, Nasser found Aurora alone in the corridor, hands trembling slightly as she picked up the mop. "Are you okay?" Nasser asked quietly. "Fine." "Did he say something to you?" Aurora forced a smile, nothing worth repeating. But her mind raced. If Blackwood recognized her, it meant everything she'd built was crumbling. 8 years of invisibility evaporating in seconds. She needed a plan. As the afternoon dragged on, she kept to back corridors, avoiding the Admiral's path. Yet no amount of caution could silence the old reflexes returning to life, scanning angles, counting exits, calculating lines of sight. The soldier in her had never really slept. She'd just been buried under routine. By 1700 hours, Blackwood's advanced team was conducting preliminary briefings. Aurora was assigned to clean the outer corridor of the conference room, the perfect position to listen. "Personnel files by 1800, a stern voice ordered. "Admiral Blackwood wants background checks on every civilian contractor." Aurora's grip tightened on the bucket handle. So that was his play, root her out officially, not personally. He would bury her again, this time under paperwork instead of mud. She had to move first. As she turned away, a folder slipped from a passing aide's hands. She stooped to help. Her fingers brushed across the stamp. "Operation Hermes Classified." The touch sent a shiver through her. 15 years of buried nightmares rose like smoke. The explosion, the betrayal, the radio silence after Blackwood's orders condemned half her team. Lieutenant Nasser appeared again, passing through the corridor at that exact moment. She saw the flicker in Aurora's eyes, saw the woman freeze for the first time. "Something wrong?" she asked. Aurora blinked and handed the folder back. "Just dust." But Nasser knew better. Night fell early. Rain drummed against the apartment windows as Aurora entered home late. Elias sat at the table again, head bent over his physics textbooks, but he looked up as soon as she walked in. "You okay?" he asked. "Long day." She forced a smile and brushed a damp strand of hair from her face. "You eat?" "Yeah." He hesitated, then said quietly, "They called from school, said you never filled the veterans form. I told them we don't have anyone. But Mom, that's not true, is it?" Aurora froze by the sink. "Elias." "I found more articles about Commander A. Calloway. That's you, isn't it?" She turned, wet from rain and regret. "Some truths don't fit into school projects." "Why not?" "Because they hurt people who don't deserve it." He searched her face, then nodded slowly. "I just want to know who we are." "You will," she promised, "just not tonight." Later, when he slept, her phone buzzed again. Unknown number. "Hermes rises at dawn. Blackwood knows." The same message, again. "No sender traceable." She deleted it immediately. Then stood by the balcony, watching storm clouds consume the city lights. Somewhere across town, Admiral Blackwood was probably reading her personnel file, realizing how empty it was. He'd see nothing but gray paper and quiet years, but soon he'd see her. In a hotel suite overlooking the naval harbor, Blackwood poured himself a drink. The glass clinked as he watched security footage on his tablet, the janitor moving through corridors, indifferent, invisible. He paused the frame, zoomed in. Her face. Older, yes, scarred maybe, but those eyes, he'd never forgotten them. "Impossible," he whispered. He picked up his secure phone. "Find everything on the maintenance worker named Calloway," he ordered. "I want records 15 to 20 years back. Cross-reference Operation Hermes Fall." "Sir, those files are sealed by presidential order." "I don't care if they're sealed by God himself," Blackwood snarled. "Open them." He ended the call, staring again at the frozen image. She looked calm, almost peaceful. He knew better. Aurora Calloway was a storm disguised as a whisper. He set down his glass, murmuring to the empty room. "You should have stayed dead." Back at the facility, Lieutenant Nasser sat alone in her office long past midnight. Rain streaked the window. The only light came from her computer screen as she dug through classified archives. Black bars, redactions, gaps where names should be. Until she found it, a photograph half blotted by ink. A uniformed officer receiving a Medal of Honor. The name hidden, but the stance unmistakable. She leaned closer and whispered, "Calloway." Files on Operation Hermes told a fractured story, Admiral Blackwood credited for strategy, yet field commander details erased. Reports altered, records missing. "Someone rewrote history," she muttered. "Someone made her disappear." She closed the file and sat back, the truth assembling like shattered glass falling into place. Tomorrow's inspection would bring them face to face. Blackwood and the ghost he made. And Lieutenant Nasser was going to see what happens when a ghost finally stops hiding. Aurora didn't sleep that night. At 4:30 she stood again in her uniform of gray coveralls, tying her boots with the same precision she once used to lace combat gear. In the mirror, the lines of command still lived beneath her civilian disguise. She looked herself in the eye and spoke aloud, barely a whisper. No more running. She picked up her bag and left for the base. Outside, the storm had passed. The sky was clear, the kind of clear that precedes collision. And somewhere in that stillness, she knew, the past was already moving toward her. Sometimes the most invisible soldier is the one who refuses to die. And sometimes silence isn't peace, it's preparation. Why did the air feel heavier than the day before? Because the lie she'd lived for 15 years was running out of oxygen. Aurora Calloway's alarm chirped at 05:30 and was silenced in a single motion. She was already awake, staring at the ceiling of her small apartment, listening to the slow rhythm of her son's breathing from the next room. The calm before the storm. She dressed without hesitation, gray coveralls, ID badge, the perfect disguise of ordinariness. Her reflection in the mirror was steady, but the pulse in her throat betrayed her. Today she would see him, the man who turned her command into a ghost story. In the kitchen, Elias was already up, textbooks open beside his breakfast. "You're early," she said, forcing a smile. "Couldn't sleep. Big physics test," he answered, then hesitated. "Mom, when you said some truths hurt people, were you talking about Dad?" Aurora stopped halfway through pouring coffee. There it was, the question she'd dodged for years. Before she could answer, her phone vibrated with a facility alert. "Inspection advanced. Report immediately." She placed a hand on his shoulder. "Tonight," she said, "we'll talk tonight." "Promise." "I never break a promise," she whispered, though part of her knew this one might be the last she ever kept. The facility was already a war zone of nerves. Boots echoed, orders snapped, tension humming like static. Aurora arrived just as Admiral Blackwood's convoy rolled through the gates, black SUVs glinting beneath the morning sun. Commander Ellis spotted her at once. Calloway, conference rooms, East Wing, admirals heading there first, everything spotless. "Yes, sir." He leaned closer. "If he finds dust, I'll personally have your badge revoked. Understood." "Understood." She turned away before her composure cracked. Fear wasn't new to her. But this wasn't battlefield fear. This was exposure, slow, silent, surgical. Inside the East Wing conference room, Aurora worked quickly, movements precise and silent. Polish glass, straightened chairs, control the rhythm of breathing. Lieutenant Nasser entered moments later, arms full of briefing folders. "Morning," she said, "or what's left of it." Aurora gave a small nod. "You look tired." "Didn't sleep," Nasser admitted. "Been reading old mission reports." She set down the folders, voice lowering. "Do you ever wonder why so many of them have redacted names, whole lives blacked out like they never existed?" Aurora's hands paused only for a moment. Maybe some people wanted it that way. Or maybe someone else did. Nasser studied her. "You ever know someone who deserved more than silence?" Aurora met her gaze. "Yes." "Still alive?" Aurora hesitated, barely. Before Nasser could push further, Commander Ellis's voice boomed from the corridor. "Admiral Blackwood approaching." The door opened, officers straightened, and the man himself walked in. Admiral Riker Blackwood, silver hair, razor smile, the calm arrogance of someone who'd never been told no. The room seemed to tilt around his presence. He inspected everything, charts, lighting, even the scent of polish, Every nod he gave carried the weight of judgment. Then his gaze landed on her. For a breathless moment, the air went still. Recognition. Then the faintest smirk. "Maintenance?" he asked, pretending confusion. "Yes, sir," Aurora answered evenly. "You run a tight ship. What's your name again?" "Calloway, sir." The name hit him like a round to the chest, but he hid it well. "Calloway," he repeated softly. "Interesting. Any relation to the commander who—" "Common name, sir," she interrupted, tone perfectly flat. He smiled without warmth. "Indeed." The silence stretched until Captain Hargrove cleared his throat. "Admiral, the Tactical Operations Center, is ready for review." "Of course," Blackwood said, still watching her. As he passed, he murmured under his breath, "I buried you once. Don't make me do it again." She didn't move, didn't breathe. Only when the door shut did she realize her hand was clenched so tight around the cleaning cloth that her knuckles had gone white. When the entourage moved on, Nasser approached quietly. "What was that about?" she whispered. Aurora didn't answer. "I saw his face, Calloway. He knows you." Aurora straightened. "You're imagining things, Lieutenant." "Am I?" Nasser stepped closer. "Because I pulled sealed data last night. Hermes fall. Field commander erased. But the surviving after-action report, what little isn't redacted, mentions a female commander, not a man. A woman whose tactical model is now standard in training programs. Your model." Aurora turned away. "Stop digging, Nasser, for your own sake. Tell me the truth." "You wouldn't survive it," Aurora said softly. By midday, the inspection had turned brutal. Blackwood moved through departments like a blade, finding faults where none existed. Officers whispered that he was looking for someone, something. They didn't know the ghost he hunted was pushing a mop 2 doors away. When the lunch break came, Aurora slipped into the maintenance office to breathe. Her phone buzzed, 3 missed calls from Elia's school. A voicemail played. "Ms. Calloway, your son left campus without permission. We can't reach him. Please call back." Her stomach dropped. Elia's never broke rules. She dialed immediately. No answer. Another attempt straight to voicemail. Then a text appeared from an unknown number. "Your boy wanted to know the truth. We're helping him find it. H." She froze. The signature, H. Hermes. Her mind raced. Blackwood. He'd found her weakness. The office door opened suddenly. Nasser stood there, urgency written all over her face. "Admiral Blackwood's asking for you." Aurora's head snapped up. "Why?" "He says the inspection requires maintenance personnel present. By name, you." The trap was closing. Aurora grabbed her mop handle, the one she'd modified years ago, steel core, balanced weight. Old habits die hardest. She followed Nasser down the hall toward the main conference room, every step measured, every breath controlled. Inside, the atmosphere was electric. Senior officers lined one side of the long table, Blackwood and his aides on the other. Cameras recorded for official audit. Aurora entered quietly and took her position against the wall. The air thickened as Blackwood's eyes found her again. Predatory calm. Captain Hargrove began formally. "Admiral Blackwood, the facility stands ready for your final assessment." "Thank you, Captain." Blackwood rose, voice carrying that controlled authority politicians cultivate. "My inspection has revealed strength and certain deficiencies." He paced slowly, every word deliberate. "But my greatest concern is integrity, within personnel files, command structures, and individual identities." A ripple of confusion moved through the officers. He stopped near Aurora. "In fact, I believe this facility harbors someone operating under false credentials." Hargrove frowned. "Admiral, that's a serious claim." "Indeed it is," Blackwood replied, "and I intend to demonstrate it." He turned sharply. Ms. Calloway stepped forward. Aurora's pulse slowed to a soldier's calm. Yes, sir. How long have you been employed here? 8 years. And before that? Various contracts. Blackwood's smile returned, predatory now. Various, interesting word, for someone whose service record doesn't seem to exist. The room went silent. Tell me, Ms. Calloway, he said softly, stepping closer. What was your rank before you picked up a mop? She met his gaze. Maintenance doesn't have ranks, sir. A flicker of anger crossed his face. No, but ghosts do. Murmurs spread among the officers. Nasser's hand twitched toward her sidearm. Aurora didn't move. Blackwood gestured to his aide. Display the footage. On the main screen, images appeared, security recordings of Aurora moving through the facility, annotated with timestamps and overlays. Her posture, her precision, her unconscious tactical awareness, all dissected like evidence in a case. Look closely, Blackwood said to the room. Does that look like a civilian custodian to you? Or does it look like a soldier trained in command, subterfuge, and, he paused, voice dropping, deception? Captain Hargrove started to speak, but Aurora cut him off quietly. Enough, Admiral. Every head turned. She stepped forward, slow, deliberate, until she stood face to face with him. What do you want? She asked. The truth, he said, publicly. You wouldn't know it if it saluted you. His jaw clenched. Tell them who you are. Aurora glanced around the room, faces of officers who'd never looked at her twice. She saw confusion, fear, awe. Then she saw Lieutenant Nasser, steady, loyal, waiting. She drew in a breath. My name, she said quietly, is Major General Aurora Calloway, United States Navy, retired by force. A stunned silence followed, thick enough to drown in. The Admiral's smirk faltered just slightly. He hadn't expected her to say it out loud. You see, he said finally, recovering, a delusional fabrication. There is no record of any such officer. Because you erased it, Aurora replied. Gasps whispered through the room. Blackwood's face hardened, careful. You buried a team, an operation, and a family to build your career, she said. And now you're standing in front of the woman you tried to erase. Before he could respond, the facility alarm blared. Security breach, main entrance. Unknown personnel entering restricted area. The giant monitor switched to live feed. A teenage boy being escorted through the lobby by 2 men in dark suits. Elias. Aurora's world tilted. Your son is quite brave, Blackwood murmured. Looks just like you did before the fall. She turned toward him, voice low and lethal. If you've hurt him. He's not hurt, Blackwood interrupted smoothly. He's leverage. Nasser drew her weapon, stepping between them. Admiral, you're out of line. Stand down, Lieutenant, Blackwood snapped, or join your janitor in disciplinary review. Aurora's control snapped like glass. Touch him and I will end you, she said, each word precise as a trigger pull. Blackwood only smiled. There she is, the soldier. The conference room doors burst open. 2 security officers entered with Elias between them. Mom, he said, eyes wide, what's happening? Aurora moved toward him, but Blackwood raised a hand. Not yet. Captain Hargrove stepped forward. Admiral, this is a civilian. You cannot. I can, Blackwood cut in, and I will, because this woman has deceived the United States Navy for 15 years. He turned back to Aurora. Major General, he said mockingly, care to explain how a dead officer managed to infiltrate my facility? She looked him in the eye. By being everything you're not, quiet, patient, and loyal. The room exploded in murmurs again, officers whispering, Nasser's weapon still raised but trembling slightly. Release my son, Aurora said softly. After we finish our conversation, Blackwood replied. Then let's finish it. she said. "Because if you don't, Admiral, this facility won't have enough walls to hide behind when the truth comes out." For a long moment, no one breathed. Outside, thunder rolled in the distance. Inside, 15 years of silence cracked like breaking glass. And somewhere deep in the facility's systems, an alert pinged from a Department of Defense terminal, an authorization signal triggered by one word: CLLAWAY. Sometimes the truth doesn't return quietly. Sometimes it comes wearing scars and holding everything you tried to destroy. Why did the alarm sound different this time? Because they weren't warning of danger outside. They were warning of truth finally breaking in. Red lights flashed across the Naval Special Warfare Command facility, bathing everything in urgent color. Officers scrambled, radios crackled, and over the intercom came a metallic voice. "Security breach in main corridor. Lockdown protocols engaged." In the conference room, chaos clashed with silence. Admiral Blackwood stood composed at the head of the table, his smile razor-thin. Aurora Calloway stood near the center, her son Elias between two armed guards, Lieutenant Nasser poised with her sidearm drawn but trembling slightly. 15 years of buried ghosts had gathered in one room. Aurora's voice was low, lethal. "Let him go." "Not until we clarify who you are," Blackwood replied. "You claim to be Major General Aurora Calloway, commander of Task Force Hermes. Yet the records, my records, show you died in action. So tell me, Ms. Calloway," he tilted his head, "are you a ghost or a fraud?" Aurora took a slow breath. The years of silence pressed against her ribs, begging to speak. "I'm neither," she said. "I'm the reason you're still wearing that uniform." Murmurs rippled through the officers. Blackwood's jaw tightened. "Careful," he said. "You're speaking treason." "Treason," she repeated softly. "That's rich, coming from the man who ordered his own people abandoned." A pause. Even the air seemed to hesitate. 15 years earlier, it had been Operation Hermes Fall, a classified mission in the deserts of Khorasan. Aurora could still smell the sand and the fuel, still hear the static of her dying radio as Blackwood's voice came through. "Retreat authorized. Repeat, retreat." But there was no retreat. Half her unit was pinned down. The evac order came too late. And when she refused to leave them, Blackwood's chopper turned back anyway. When she finally crawled out of that desert 3 days later, she was the only one left alive. And officially, she never existed again. Now in this sterile room of polished metal and rank, those memories burned behind her eyes. "You left us," she said, voice shaking only once. "You left them to die so you could extract your data package, and when the operation went public, you took the credit and wrote our names out of history." Blackwood's smile never reached his eyes. Conspiracy theories are unbecoming for janitors. "Then explain this," Aurora said. She reached into her uniform sleeve and pulled a small metal dog tag from a chain. She tossed it onto the table, clink. The room fell silent. "Recognize it?" she asked. "You should. It belonged to Captain Isaac Monroe, one of the men you left behind." Blackwood glanced at the tag, then at her. "You expect anyone to believe a trinket proves your delusion?" "No," Aurora said, "but I think they'll believe this." She stepped to the console near the wall, an access panel she'd quietly repaired dozens of times over the years. With 3 precise keystrokes, she entered a hidden code burned into her muscle memory. HRMSFLL01. The overhead monitors flickered. Then, without warning, the main screen filled with grainy footage, helmet cam video, dated 15 years prior. Gasps filled the room. The recording showed a tactical unit under fire, pinned between ridges of burning vehicles. Aurora's younger voice crackled through the feed. "Command, we are surrounded, requesting evac coordinates." Another voice, Blackwood's, answered coldly. "Negative, data retrieval takes priority. You're on your own, Commander. The feed trembled with explosions, then static. Aurora stopped the playback. The silence that followed was deafening. Every officer in the room turned toward Blackwood. His composure wavered for the first time. Fabrication, he said quickly. Deepfake constructed from public. Encrypted metadata says otherwise, Nasser cut in sharply. Timestamp radio ID field channel all authentic. Blackwood's glare sliced toward her. Lieutenant, you're out of line. With respect, sir, she said, leveling her weapon, so are you. Aurora stepped closer, voice like gravel. You erased my team, my record, my life. You even buried my wife under an accident report. You thought if you deleted the paper trail, the people would disappear too. Because they needed to, Blackwood snapped. Because you went rogue. You defied command to save 6 soldiers instead of retrieving intelligence that would have saved thousands. You made a choice, and I made mine. Aurora's voice dropped to a whisper. You made a sacrifice, but it wasn't yours to make. Elias broke the silence, trembling. Mom, is this true? Aurora turned to him, eyes soft for the first time. I didn't want you to grow up with a ghost for a mother. But you're not a ghost, he said. I'm someone who tried to protect you from the world that built men like him. Blackwood laughed once, low and cruel. Touching, but this ends now. Commander Ellis, detain her. No one moved. Now, Commander, he barked. Ellis swallowed, eyes darting between them. Sir, after that footage, I think. You think, Blackwood hissed. You obey. Nasser spoke before anyone else could. No, sir, we don't. Her weapon raised fully. You're under arrest, Admiral. The room froze. Blackwood's expression turned cold and unreadable. You're making a mistake, Lieutenant. Aurora placed a hand on Nasser's arm. Don't. He'll drag you down with him. I won't let him walk out, Nasser whispered. He won't, Aurora said, but not this way. Blackwood sneered. How noble, still playing the martyr. He turned toward the exit, then stopped when the intercom crackled overhead. This facility is now under external review. Department of Defense oversight confirmed. Do not leave the premises. Aurora exhaled. She triggered the emergency review when she accessed the Hermes files. Once the code went live, the system automatically alerted a federal oversight AI, locking down all personnel until investigation concluded. Blackwood realized it too late. His face twisted. You think you've won? No, Aurora said softly. I think I've finally stopped losing. He lunged suddenly, faster than anyone expected. His hand snatched Elias by the collar, yanking the boy toward him. You're not taking anything else from me, he snarled. Stand down or he dies. Weapons rose instantly. Nasser, the guards, even Commander Ellis, but no one dared shoot. Elias gasped, terrified, as Blackwood pressed his sidearm against the boy's ribs. You always cared too much for the weak, he hissed at Aurora. That's why you lost everything. Aurora's eyes went flat, her breathing slow. She stepped forward once. Then again. Voice steady, quiet, almost tender. You're right, I care too much. Her hands came up empty. Let him go, she said. This isn't your fight anymore. You think I'm afraid too. He never finished. With a single motion, Aurora flicked her wrist. The steel-cord mop handle she'd carried all these years snapped free from its bucket. She swung it upward, striking his forearm with precise, surgical force. The gun clattered to the floor. Elias broke free. 2 guards tackled Blackwood, pinning him hard against the table. For a second, no one moved. Then the boy ran into her arms. She held him tight, tight enough to anchor herself in reality. Her whole body trembled, but her voice stayed calm. It's over, she said. Blackwood struggled under restraint, face crimson. You think the truth saves you. It won't. They'll bury you again, Calloway, because that's what this system does. Aurora stepped closer. Maybe, she said, but this time it'll bury you first. Hours later, the facility was locked down under federal supervision. Agents moved like shadows through the hallways, confiscating devices, sealing rooms, gathering statements. Aurora sat alone in an interrogation chamber, still in her gray coveralls, hands folded. Through the glass, she saw Elias sitting with Nasser in the waiting area safe. That was all that mattered. A man entered, civilian suit, calm demeanor. Major General Calloway, he said quietly, or should I say Ms. Calloway? She gave a faint smile. Depends who's asking. Office of Inspector General. We reviewed the footage. We verified the metadata. Everything checks out. He placed a folder on the table. You understand what this means? I do, she said. I'll cooperate. Your testimony will be protected. Blackwood, been detained. He'll face a military tribunal. She nodded. Relief didn't come, only exhaustion. General, the agent hesitated, then softened his tone. Why stay hidden so long? Aurora's eyes drifted to the window where her son sat waiting. Because some wars never end, Agent. They just change uniforms. He nodded slowly. What do you want to do now? She thought for a long moment, then said simply, go home. When they finally stepped outside, dawn was rising again. The air smelled of salt and metal, like it always had. Nasser walked beside her, Elias close behind. You could have disappeared again, Nasser said quietly. Started over. Aurora smiled faintly. I'm done running. What will you do? She looked toward the horizon, the light soft against her face. Maybe teach, maybe garden, maybe just sit still for once. Elias squeezed her hand. You still owe me a story. I know, she said, and this time I'll tell it right. They walked toward the parking lot, 3 silhouettes against the rising sun. Behind them, the sirens had gone silent. The ghosts were quiet now, too. Aurora turned one last time toward the facility that had been both her prison and her sanctuary. Under her breath, she whispered, Catherine, it's done. Then she walked away. Sometimes redemption doesn't roar. Sometimes it whispers through the sound of a mop on a polished floor. The quiet rhythm of someone who refused to die a second time. Why did silence feel louder after victory? Because real battles don't end with explosions. They end with paperwork, headlines, and the hollow echo of truth finally spoken out loud. It had been 4 weeks since Admiral Riker Blackwood was led away in handcuffs. 4 weeks since the truth about Operation Hermes Fall broke across every major news outlet in the country. The footage, the helmet cam, the redacted files, the voice recordings, had gone viral in under 12 hours. And suddenly, everyone wanted to know who Major General Aurora Calloway was. The ghost had become a headline. She didn't like it. The tribunal chamber smelled of wood, polish, and static. Rows of officers, press observers, and military attorneys filled the room. Cameras weren't allowed, but everyone knew the transcripts would leak anyway. Aurora sat quietly at the witness table, her gray hair pulled back in a bun, her old uniform reinstated just for formality. It still fit, barely. Across from her sat Admiral Blackwood, restrained, rigid, eyes burning with restrained contempt. He looked smaller now, not physically, spiritually. The prosecutor rose first. Major General Calloway, please recount for the record your position during Operation Hermes Fall. Aurora's voice was calm, unembellished. I was commanding officer of Task Force Hermes. Our mission was to retrieve stolen encryption drives from hostile territory. We encountered resistance. And what happened after that? The Admiral, then Captain Blackwood, ordered our extraction to be delayed until he secured digital intelligence from the target site. That decision cost my team their lives. Blackwood scoffed audibly. Revisionist nonsense, you disobeyed orders. Aurora didn't even look at him. I followed the only order that matters, the one every soldier makes with themselves. Don't leave anyone behind. Her words cut through the room like a slow, steady blade. The prosecutor nodded, and afterward, I was presumed KIA. I survived 3 days in the desert. When I returned, my clearance was revoked. I was told the operation had never officially existed. By whom? Aurora met Blackwood's eyes. Him. For a moment the Admiral looked ready to strike, but he didn't. He just smiled that same hollow smile. You always needed someone to blame. No, Aurora said softly. I needed someone to remember. The courtroom fell silent. Even the hum of the lights seemed to fade. That night, when the tribunal adjourned, Aurora found herself alone in a quiet hallway outside. No cameras, no microphones, just her and the long shadow of 15 years. She sat on a bench, hands clasped. The uniform felt heavier now than it ever had on deployment. Lieutenant Nasser approached quietly, a file under her arm. You were incredible in there, she said. Aurora smiled faintly. Incredible and exhausted aren't far apart. Nasser sat beside her. They'll convict him, you know that, right? Maybe, but conviction doesn't bring back the dead. No, Nasser said, but it stops the rot. Aurora looked at her, studying the younger woman's face. There was admiration there, but something else too, resolve. You ever wonder, Aurora asked, if truth is worth the cost? Every day, Nasser said, but you paid it for all of us. Aurora exhaled, eyes drifting toward the tribunal doors. Then I hope it was enough. 2 days later, the verdict came. Admiral Riker Blackwood, guilty of falsifying military records, gross dereliction of duty, and obstruction of justice. Sentence, dismissal, imprisonment, full revocation of honors. The headlines called it the fall of the Iron Admiral. But Aurora didn't celebrate. When justice finally arrived, it didn't feel like triumph. It felt like rain after a drought, necessary, cleansing, and quietly devastating. She stood outside the courthouse, press swarming, microphones shouting questions. General Calloway, what's next for you? Do you plan to return to active service? Do you consider yourself a hero? She paused only once before answering. No, she said simply. I consider myself alive, that's enough. Then she turned and walked away. Elias met her by the car. He'd grown quieter these last few weeks, not distant, just thoughtful. The kind of quiet that comes when your world suddenly grows bigger than you knew. He opened the door for her, voice soft. You look strong up there. She smiled. I was. You were to me, he said, always were. She studied him, his eyes, his posture, the stubborn tilt of his chin. Catherine's son through and through. He hesitated. Mom, can I ask something? Of course. If Dad were still here, what would you have told him? Aurora looked out the window for a long time before answering. That I did my best, she whispered, even when it broke me. Elias nodded, not pressing further. He didn't need to. Sometimes silence said everything. Days turned into weeks. The media storm faded. Aurora refused interviews, awards, and book deals. She kept her distance from everything that tried to turn her pain into entertainment. Instead, she found herself standing in a classroom one morning, military academy, cadets lined up, eager, disciplined. She'd been invited to speak, reluctantly. She didn't talk about tactics, or war, or medals. She talked about silence. Everyone tells you about courage, she said, packing slowly before them. About standing tall in the line of fire, but no one tells you what happens afterward, when the shooting stops and all you're left with is the echo. The cadets listened, eyes locked on her. Courage isn't in the charge, she continued. It's in the quiet. It's when you choose not to let guilt define you. It's when you wake up and still decide to serve, even if no one salutes you anymore. A single clap began from the back of the room, then another. By the time she finished, the entire hall stood in silence, not applause, just respect. Later, Lieutenant Nasser met her outside. "You still inspire them," she said. Aurora smiled faintly. "Maybe they'll make fewer mistakes than we did. Or just different ones." "Either way," Aurora said, "they'll learn faster." That evening, Aurora sat on her porch, the setting sun bleeding through the clouds. Elias sat beside her, guitar in his lap, playing something soft, something unfinished. "You ever think about going back?" he asked. "To the Navy?" "Yeah." Aurora shook her head. "I think I've fought enough wars for one lifetime." "But you're still fighting, aren't you? Just quieter." She smiled. "Maybe the quiet battles count too." He strummed another chord, uncertain. "I read something once," he said, "that the opposite of forgetting isn't remembering, it's honoring." Aurora looked at him, eyes soft. "That's a good line." "It's yours," he said. "You said it to me when I was 10. She chuckled, shaking her head. "Then I was wiser back then." They sat in the fading light, mother and son, bound by truth and loss, and something stronger than both. For the first time in years, Aurora felt no weight pressing on her chest, just stillness. Just peace. Weeks later, an official envelope arrived, Department of the Navy. Inside, a reinstatement letter, signed by the Secretary of Defense. Honor restored, full rank and pension, recognition of service. Aurora read it once, folded it carefully, and placed it in a drawer she didn't plan to open again. She wasn't looking for redemption in medals. She'd already found it in forgiveness. One night, long after Elias had gone to bed, Aurora stood in her living room, staring at an old photograph she'd never framed. Her, Catherine, and a younger Elias on a sunlit pier, wind whipping hair and laughter across the lens. She whispered softly into the quiet. "We made it, love. Not the way we planned, but we made it." Her reflection in the glass smiled back. Older, scarred, but finally free. She turned off the light and went outside. The stars were bright that night, the kind of clarity that only comes after storms. She breathed in the cool air, the sound of crickets rising like a hymn. And for the first time in 15 years, she didn't feel like a ghost. She felt human again. The world moved on. But some people never forgot. Every few months, anonymous flowers appeared at the memorial wall of the fallen, 6 white lilies, one for each of the soldiers from Task Force Hermes. No note. Just the signature carved into the wood grain near the base. AC. Those who noticed never asked who left them. They just nodded, understanding something unspoken. That remembrance doesn't always need an audience. Sometimes it's just one person standing quietly in the morning light, head bowed, whispering the names that history tried to erase. Some truths survive because someone chooses to carry them. Not loudly, not publicly. Just faithfully. And sometimes dignity doesn't speak, it simply acts. Why do the ghosts always come back when things get quiet? Because silence is where they hide best. Aurora Calloway hadn't worn a uniform in months. Not the old one, not even the reinstated one that sat folded in the drawer she never opened. These days, her uniform was a denim jacket and work gloves. Her weapons were pruning shears and sunlight. She built a small greenhouse behind her home, rows of tomatoes, basil, and something like peace. The world had begun to forget her name again, and that was fine. She preferred it that way. Her mornings started the same. Water the plants, brew her coffee, read the newspaper without looking at the headlines that still used her name like a brand. But this morning, peace didn't come with the sunrise. A car pulled up in the driveway. Aurora looked through the window and saw Lieutenant Admiral Nasser step out, still in uniform, still carrying the same energy of someone who couldn't quite leave the battlefield behind. "Permission to enter the garden," Nasser called, half smiling. Aurora wiped her hands on her jeans. "You don't need permission, Lieutenant. You already know the way." Nasser stepped into the greenhouse, looking around. "You've turned this place into a base for tomatoes." Aurora chuckled softly. "They don't talk back and they don't shoot." Nasser smiled faintly, then her expression turned serious. "You've been off the grid." "That was the point." "I figured, but Command's been asking about you." Aurora raised an eyebrow. "Command asking or Command needing?" "Maybe both." Aurora kept watering the soil. "Go on." Nasser hesitated. "They're building a new unit, experimental, cross-branch intelligence, hybrid command. They want an advisory director, someone with real field experience." "I'm retired," Aurora said. "They know, that's why they asked me to ask you." Aurora looked up, really looking at her. "Why you?" "Because they know you trust me," Nasser said quietly. "Or at least, you trust me more than you trust them." Aurora studied her face for a long moment. "Do you?" Nasser sighed. "I trust what this could be, a chance to fix what men like Blackwood broke." Aurora turned off the hose. "You think a new logo and better lighting changes the system?" "I think someone like you inside it could." The silence stretched between them, heavy and familiar. Aurora finally said, "I buried that world Adira." "I know, but it didn't stay buried. It's still shaping the next generation. And if you don't help guide them, someone else will." Aurora looked at the rows of green leaves, glistening with water. "Every war leaves seeds," she murmured. "We just keep growing new ones." Nasser didn't argue. She just stood there, patient. "Think about it," she said finally, handing over a sealed folder. "If you say yes, you'll be training my team, covert operations, real missions. And if I say no, then they'll find someone less qualified and more dangerous." Aurora took the folder but didn't open it. "You always were good at guilt-tripping your elders." "Learned from the best," Nasser said, smiling again. "I'll wait for your answer." As she walked back toward the car, Aurora called out, "Lieutenant." Nasser turned. "You trust these people?" "I trust the mission," Nasser said, "not the men funding it." Aurora nodded slowly. "Then maybe you're smarter than I was." That night, Aurora sat at her kitchen table, long after Elias had gone to bed. The folder sat unopened in front of her, its seal catching the light. She turned it over once, twice, like it might bite. When she finally broke the seal, the top page hit her harder than she expected. Project Echo. Subtext: Strategic Human Behavioral Integration Unit. And beneath that, a motto printed in bold. "The past teaches the future." Attached were personnel summaries. Nasser listed as operational lead. 4 recruits, young, diverse, raw. Each with the same haunted potential she used to see in her own soldiers' eyes. At the bottom was a blank space labeled Advisory Oversight Callaway, A pending acceptance. She sat back, the paper trembling faintly in her hand. The ghosts were patient. They always waited. 3 days later, she found herself standing in front of the same military base she'd once been escorted out of in disgrace. Now the gate guards saluted her by name. "Welcome back, ma'am," one said. Aurora nodded but didn't smile. "Let's not make it a habit." Inside, the new facility gleamed, all glass and chrome, the military's attempt at transparency. She hated it already. Nasser met her at the entrance, smiling like she'd won a bet. "I knew you'd come." "I didn't come to stay," Aurora warned. "Understood, but just wait till you see them." She led Aurora through a long corridor lined with tactical screens and holomaps. Inside a training bay stood 4 recruits, 2 men, 2 women, all under 30. They moved with sharp precision but without rhythm, raw talent, no cohesion. Exactly what Nasser had promised. Aurora crossed her arms. They're green. They're fearless, Nasser replied. We need someone who knows how to teach restraint. Aurora watched one of the recruits, a tall woman with restless eyes, miss her mark during a timed simulation. The others moved around her, frustration rising. Aurora stepped forward. Stop, she called. The word cut through the room like an order from another life. All four froze. Aurora approached slowly. What's your name? Corporal Vega, ma'am. You rush your corners, Vega. You trust muscle more than thought. That gets people killed. Vega's chin lifted slightly. With respect, ma'am, I trust instincts. Aurora nodded. Good, but instincts without patience are panic. She turned to the group. You think you're ready for chaos. You're not. You think war is noise. It's not. It's silence. It's waiting. It's the 5 seconds before everything changes, and whether you can live in those 5 seconds determines if you go home or not. The recruits stood still. Even Nasser didn't move. Aurora exhaled softly. Again, she said, run it back. They obeyed without question. When the drill ended, Vega approached her quietly. Ma'am, were you there, Hermes' fall? Aurora hesitated. Yes. What was it like? Loud, she said, then quiet, and I've been living in that quiet ever since. By evening, Aurora found herself walking alone through the base courtyard. The sun dipped behind the horizon, casting long shadows that stretched like memory across the concrete. Nasser caught up with her. You still have that command presence, she said. They'd follow you into hell. I'm not taking them there, Aurora said. You're already leading them, Nasser replied, whether you admit it or not. Aurora stopped by the railing overlooking the bay. The water reflected streaks of dying light. You ever regret joining? She asked quietly. Nasser thought about it. Every day, but not enough to quit. Aurora nodded slowly. Then maybe you're ready. For what? To take the torch, she said, when I'm done. Nasser frowned. You're not staying. Aurora smiled faintly. Maybe for a while, maybe just long enough to remind them that discipline isn't obedience, it's conscience. Nasser tilted her head. You think they'll listen? No, Aurora said, but one of them will, and that's enough. That night, Aurora returned home to find Elias waiting on the porch steps. He was holding one of her old medals, the one she'd hidden in a drawer years ago. You went back, he said. I visited, she corrected. Same thing, he said with a grin. You always told me you can't fix a system from outside the fence. She sat beside him. I also told you to pick your battles. He handed her the medal. Maybe this one picked you. Aurora looked at the medal, dull and scratched. Maybe. They sat there as the crickets began to sing, the world softening around them. He leaned his head against her shoulder, like he used to when he was small. Do you miss it? He asked. Every day, she admitted, but I don't miss who I was in it. You were a hero. No, she said softly. I was a survivor. Heroes don't get to walk away. He was quiet for a moment, then whispered, You earned both. She smiled. You sound like your father. I never met him. You didn't have to, she said. He's in the way you ask questions that scare people. Elias laughed quietly. Guess I get that from you too. Maybe. Weeks passed. Aurora became an unofficial mentor, part consultant, part ghost in the corridors. She spoke little, watched everything, corrected what needed correction. The recruits learned fast. Nasser led better than she had years ago, measured, focused, not afraid to question orders. For the first time in a long time, Aurora felt something almost like hope. But deep inside, she knew peace never lasted. And sure enough, one morning, a report slid across her desk that made her blood run cold. Project Echo, Overseas Deployment Proposal, Classified Tier Alpha. Authorization Signature, R. Blackwood, Temporary Pardon Pending. Her breath caught. She stared at the name until the letters blurred. They hadn't buried the system after all. It had just changed masks. That night she stood on her balcony, staring out at the horizon. The wind carried the faint smell of salt and rust. Her phone buzzed Nasser's message. "You saw it." Aurora typed back. "Yes, we need to talk." She set the phone down, heart steady but heavy. Peace had been temporary. War had just learned how to whisper. Sometimes the ghosts don't haunt you to hurt you. Sometimes they return to remind you that your story isn't finished yet. Why did betrayal always sound the same? A soft click, a signature on a form. The quiet weight of power, used the wrong way. Aurora Calloway sat in her office, a stack of classified folders spread across the desk. The fluorescent lights above hummed softly, indifferent to what they illuminated. She'd seen these patterns before, new acronyms, old lies dressed in new uniforms. Project Echo, a name that promised innovation and whispered corruption. The report lay open in front of her. Overseas deployment, Tier Alpha clearance. Authorization, R. Blackwood temporary pardon pending. He was back, not in person, not yet, but his signature was, his influence, his ghosts. Aurora rubbed the scar beneath her collarbone, a phantom ache returning. "You don't die, do you?" she murmured to the empty room. "You just rebrand." The door opened without a knock. Lieutenant Nasser stepped inside, her uniform sharp but her eyes uncertain. "You saw it too," Aurora said. Nasser nodded. "I checked twice. It's legitimate. They approved a conditional release. Blackwood's being moved from Leavenworth to a defense contractor holding unit in Virginia." Aurora closed the folder slowly. "They don't release men like him. They recycle them." Nasser sat opposite her. "Command claims it's part of a review program. Advisors with legacy experience." She snorted. "That's one way to describe treason." Aurora leaned back, eyes narrowing. "Who signed the authorization?" Department of Strategic Operations, a name that didn't exist until 2 months ago. "Private oversight, government funding," Aurora murmured. "Same machine, different hands." Nasser hesitated. "What do we do?" Aurora looked up. "We find out who's pulling the strings." That night, the base emptied out by 2200. Aurora stayed behind, the glow of monitors casting her face in blue light. Her fingers moved across a restricted database, typing with the same precision she'd once used to field strip a rifle. Every firewall felt familiar, built by the same architects who had buried her once before. "Access denied. Access denied." Then, "Access granted." Her screen filled with documents. Budget flows, satellite contracts, personnel transfers. At the center of it all, a corporate name, Helios Defense Solutions. Aurora whispered the word like it tasted wrong. Helios, the company that had manufactured the drones used in Operation Hermes Fall. Now quietly funding Project Echo. "Of course," she muttered, "the war never ends, it just changes who profits." Behind her, a voice said softly, "You always talk to yourself this much, General." Aurora spun, hand instinctively moving toward her hip. Nasser stood in the doorway holding 2 cups of coffee. "Decaf," she said. "I figured you'd still be here." Aurora relaxed slightly. "You move too quiet for your own good." "Learned it from you," Nasser said, handing her a cup. Then she saw the screen. "Helios, the contractor from." "Yes." Aurora's tone was sharp, weary. "They've been laundering operations under new command designations. Blackwood's release is just step 1. Why risk exposing themselves?" "They're not risking anything," Aurora said. "They're betting no one cares. The world's too tired to notice another shadow war." Nasser leaned closer. "So we expose them." Aurora shook her head. "Not yet. You don't fight the storm by shouting at the thunder. You wait for the lightning." Nasser frowned, meaning. Meaning, Aurora said quietly, we let them make the first mistake, then we make it their last. The following week, an official communiqué arrived. Blackwood's transfer had been finalized. He was to serve as an advisory consultant for Project Echo's international phase. Effective immediately. Aurora felt her stomach twist when she read the memo. He was walking into her house again, this time through the front door. That afternoon, she called Nasser into her office. You'll get a message soon, Aurora said, from command. It'll say Blackwood's coming in for strategic evaluation. They'll want you to brief him. Nasser blinked. They can't. They will, Aurora cut in, and you'll say yes. Excuse me. You'll play along. We need to know how deep this goes. Nasser stared at her, jaw tight. You want me to sit across from the man who tried to erase you, who almost killed your son? Aurora's voice softened. Yes. Why me? Because he won't see you coming, Aurora said. He still underestimates women who follow orders. Nasser's anger flickered, but then she understood. And when he gets here, then we find out what he's really building. 3 days later, the devil walked back in wearing a visitor's badge. Admiral No, consultant, Riker Blackwood entered the Project Echo facility flanked by 2 security officers. The same cold eyes, the same perfect posture, and a smirk that said he'd already won. Aurora watched from the observation deck, above the glass-walled briefing room. Below, Nasser greeted him calmly. Mr. Blackwood, she said evenly, welcome to Echo. He smiled faintly. Lieutenant Nasser, you look exactly like your personnel file described you, efficient, idealistic. Dangerous combination, she asked. The deadliest kind, he said. Aurora's knuckles whitened around the railing. She couldn't hear everything, but she didn't need to. She could read lips, posture, silence. Blackwood was probing, testing the boundaries. And Nasser was holding her ground. When the meeting ended, Aurora intercepted Nasser outside. Well, she asked. Nasser handed her a flash drive. He slipped, twice, mentioned something called Echo Core, said it was a tactical AI trained on Hermes data. Aurora froze. Trained on what? Your old mission logs, Nasser said. They're using your team's battlefield recordings to feed a decision-learning algorithm, predictive warfare. Aurora's pulse spiked. He's building a machine that learns from our dead. Nasser nodded grimly, and it's already operational. Aurora looked at the flash drive like it was radioactive. We end this, now. That night they met in a secured comms room, lights dimmed, doors locked. Aurora placed the flash drive into an isolated system. The screen flickered, then filled with lines of code and fragmented images, footage, audio snippets, mission telemetry. Voices she hadn't heard in 15 years filled the speakers. Cover me 3 o'clock. We've got civilians incoming, no fire. Commander, what's the call? Aurora's hand covered her mouth. She recognized every voice. Her soldiers, her friends, her ghosts. The system wasn't just using their data. It was replicating their decisions, predicting them. What is this? Nasser whispered. Aurora's voice broke. It's them, it's all of them turned into algorithms. On screen the words flashed. Echo Core V10 Neural Model Source, Callaway Command Logs Hermes Archive. They used your command data to train it, Nasser said softly. Blackwood said it would eliminate human hesitation. Aurora's chest tightened. Hesitation is what makes us human. Nasser leaned back, horror dawning. He's trying to replace command judgment entirely. Automated war. No conscience, no pause. Aurora looked at her reflection in the screen, eyes hollow, rage slow burning. We can't let it deploy. Nasser nodded. We expose it. Aurora turned toward her. If we do that, they'll come after us both. Then let them, Nasser said. You taught me that silence only protects the guilty. Aurora smiled faintly. You quote me too much. You made the mistake of saying things worth remembering, Nasser said. At 200 hours, they uploaded the Echo Core files to an external, encrypted channel, a secure military oversight board known only to Aurora from her days in deep command. It took 8 minutes. 8 minutes to undo 15 years of silence. When the upload finished, Aurora powered down the system. That's it, she said. It's out. Nasser exhaled. So what happens now? Aurora looked toward the door, knowing full well what came next. Now we wait for the knock. And right on cue. Bang, bang, bang. Military police. Uniformed, armed, efficient. General Calloway, Lieutenant Nasser, step away from the terminal. Aurora whispered, that was fast. Nasser's hand went to her holster. Orders. Aurora shook her head. No, we do this clean. They turned, hands raised. The lead officer's voice was steady. You're under detainment for unauthorized data extraction from a classified system. Nasser muttered, we just stopped a war. Not our call, the officer said. Aurora smiled grimly. It never is. They were escorted out, hands cuffed, heads high. And as they passed the glass walls of Project Echo, Aurora caught sight of the lab one last time. Inside, the monitor still glowed with code. The machine was awake. Watching. Listening. Her reflection blinked against the glass, one human face staring back at the future's cold eye. And she thought not with fear, but with grim understanding. You learned from us. Now learn this. We fight back. Hours later, in a secure holding room, Nasser whispered, they'll bury us. Aurora smiled faintly. Maybe, but seeds grow underground. Nasser leaned her head against the wall. You always talk in riddles. It's not a riddle, Aurora said softly. It's faith. Outside the cell, an officer spoke into a comm. Ma'am, containment secured. They sent the files. A voice replied through static, calm female. Good, let them. The world needs to see what we've become. Aurora's eyes lifted. She recognized the voice. Someone in command had wanted this to leak. For the first time that night, she smiled, small, tired, but real. Maybe ghosts weren't the only ones listening anymore. Sometimes the system doesn't collapse when you expose it. It shifts. And sometimes that shift is the first sign of light breaking through. Why did the truth never feel like freedom? Because it always arrived wearing chains. The holding cell was silent except for the faint hum of the ventilation system. Pale light filtered through the narrow window, painting thin stripes across the concrete floor. Aurora Calloway sat on the cot, elbows on her knees, fingers laced. She looked calm, too calm, given that she'd just been arrested for exposing the military's most advanced weapons project. But that calm wasn't peace, it was resolve. Across from her, Lieutenant Nasser paced. This is insane, she muttered. We did the right thing, they know it. Aurora didn't look up. Knowing and admitting aren't the same. Still, they'll need time, Aurora said quietly. The system's like a glacier. It moves, but only after it crushes something first. Nasser exhaled sharply, frustrated. I didn't sign up for this part. Aurora smiled faintly. None of us ever do. 2 days passed before the door opened. 2 guards entered, followed by a woman in a black suit. Civilian, confident, eyes sharp. Major General Calloway, Lieutenant Nasser, she said. My name is Director Rivassolis, Department of Defense Oversight. Nasser crossed her arms. Come to add another charge. Solis ignored the tone. You two caused quite a storm. Good, Aurora said simply. Solis placed a tablet on the table. Project Echo has been suspended. The Echo Core AI is under full federal seizure. Blackwood's reinstatement was illegal, and the contract with Helios Defense is terminated. Aurora blinked once, slowly. That was fast. Solis smirked. You think your little upload went unnoticed? Every journalist with clearance above Janitor got a copy. The Pentagon didn't have time to bury it. Nasser's relief came in a half-laugh. So we're not being charged. Not officially, Solis said. Unofficially, you're both radioactive. Every branch wants to claim you or distance themselves. You're heroes in one building and traitors in the next. Aurora leaned back, expression unreadable. Story of my life. Solis studied her for a moment. You know, you could have gone public, made speeches, written books. Instead, you sent the evidence to internal oversight. Why? Aurora looked her in the eye. Because I wasn't trying to burn the house down. I was trying to fix the foundation. Solis nodded slowly, impressed. Well, congratulations, you shook it at least. She stood. You're both cleared for release, effective immediately. But understand this, you won't get medals for this one. You'll get history's silence. Aurora's smile was faint. That's the only kind that lasts. Outside the facility, the air felt different. Clean, wide, free. Nasser inhaled deeply, as though she'd forgotten how. I can't believe it's over. Aurora shook her head. It's never over, but maybe it's enough. A car waited by the curb, Elias at the wheel, his grin wide and tired. When he saw his mother step out, he ran to her without hesitation, arms wrapping tight around her shoulders. I told you, she said softly against his hair. I always come back. He pulled back slightly. I didn't doubt you, not once. Nasser watched, smiling. You've got a good kid, General. Aurora looked at her. I know. Elias turned to Nasser. You're the one who helped her, right? Nasser nodded, tried to. Aurora smiled, succeeded. They all laughed, the kind of laughter that comes after storms, fragile but real. Weeks passed. The world moved on, as it always did. Project Echo vanished from official channels, buried under layers of national interest. Blackwood's release authorization was rescinded, and he disappeared into the system's quiet machinery, a name no longer worth printing. But the leak had done its work. Committees were formed, oversight expanded, words like ethics, autonomy, and human accountability returned to vocabulary that had forgotten them. Aurora didn't attend any hearings. She didn't make statements. She didn't want to be the face of anything. Instead, she went home. Her garden had overgrown during her absence, wild and green. She didn't trim it. She liked it that way, alive, chaotic, unafraid. One morning, she found a letter in her mailbox. No return address. Just a single sentence on plain paper. We built something better this time, and we did it human. Signed N. Aurora smiled, folded it carefully. Tucked it into the journal where she kept her old photos. She turned the page and added a new entry. War changes form, so must we. If machines ever learn conscience, let it be from our mistakes, not our ambition. She closed the book and went outside. Elias was by the car, backpack slung over one shoulder. They accepted me, he said, grinning. Accepted you where? The Air Force Academy. Aurora froze. You're serious? He nodded. I figured, maybe I could make things better from inside like you did. She didn't answer right away. She just looked at him, her son, her living second chance, and finally said softly, Promise me one thing. Anything. When the world asks you to be a weapon, remember you're a person first. He smiled, always. She reached up, brushing a lock of hair from his forehead. Then you'll do fine. He hugged her tight, then got into the car. She watched until the tail lights disappeared down the road, a faint blur of red in the morning mist. And when she finally turned back toward the house, she whispered, Catherine, he's ready. That night, Aurora sat on her porch as dusk melted into stars. The world was quiet, but it wasn't empty. Crickets, wind, distant laughter from a neighbor's house, life moving forward. She thought of the men and women she'd lost, of the ones she'd saved. Of Blackwood, of Nasser, of Elias, all threads in the same vast, flawed tapestry. For years she'd believed her legacy was the mission she failed. Now she knew better. Her legacy was survival. And survival, in a world that kept trying to erase you, was its own kind of defiance. Weeks later, Nasser came to visit. No uniform this time, just jeans, a leather jacket, and the faint exhaustion of someone who'd seen too much and still chosen to believe in something. They sat on the porch, coffee between them, the night cool and kind. "Heard your boy made it in," Nasser said. Aurora smiled. "He did, and you?" Nasser leaned back, staring at the stars. "Heading a new division, ethics review board. Sounds boring, but it's a start." Aurora chuckled. "Boring is underrated." Nasser hesitated. "You ever think we'll stop fighting?" Aurora looked out across the dark horizon where the ocean met the sky. "No," she said, "but maybe we'll fight better." Nasser nodded. "I'll take that." They sat in silence for a long time. Then quietly, Aurora said, "You know what peace really is?" Nasser looked over. "What?" "It's not the absence of noise. It's the presence of choice." Nasser smiled softly. "You always did know how to end a conversation." Aurora laughed. "Force of habit." They finished their coffee as the first light of dawn began to edge over the world. A soft silver glow spilled across the garden, touching the leaves, the air, their faces. And for the first time in years, Aurora didn't feel like she was watching the sunrise. She felt like she was part of it. Some wars never end. They just change uniforms. But the people who choose to stay human, they are the ceasefire the world never sees. Because sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts.